So your customer has a problem and you are designing a solution to fit that problem. Okay. So you are driving from your customer problem to build a solution. Okay. So what's so great about your solution? What's so different about the solution you have thought? Okay. Is it cheaper, better, faster, greener? Is it more ethical? Is it more desirable? Okay. So what is the nature of the solution that you are trying to present? Or is it an SISP? SISP simply means solution in search of a problem. Okay, so what is that? Okay, let's say you have a nice technology implementation that is unique and you are finding how to use it. Okay, many entrepreneurs build successful startups by anchoring onto the solution, such as a new technology or patent, and then searching for a problem. Okay, in this case, you are first in search of the use cases or opportunities, what we call as opportunity discovery. Okay, if that is the case, you want to look at what we call as market attractiveness. Okay, are those use cases market attractive? Okay, so you will come across a lot of use cases, and if you put them on this quadrant, you have on one axis the market access challenges, the ability to enter that market, the ability to find users in that market, okay, the ability to penetrate into that market, and on the other axis you have the potential of the market, right? So of all these use cases, you have to figure out which ones you want to pick. Okay, you're going to pick one with high market access challenges and low market potential. It's questionable. Why are you doing this at all, right? If you are picking up one with low market access challenges and low market potential, you are basically looking for a quick win. Okay, so is it going to be a long-term startup, or is it going to be a momentary startup? Or you might come across a use case that has a very high market potential, and it's possible for you through your network or some other means to reach that market. It's a gold mine for you. Okay, or you have you have use cases where the market potential is very high and the barriers to entry are also very high. That's a moonshot, right? It's very difficult to get to that market, and it has a very high potential. Okay, so to give you an example of moonshot, is space travel. Okay, SpaceX is a moonshot, right? Very high market access challenges, but very high market potential. Okay.
So we have similar inspiring stories about the 14 startups that we are going to present today. And each one of them, very fascinating story and why they embarked on this journey, okay, with us. So there are 14 startups that we're going to present over here, but they also started with an idea, okay, similar to Tilak Patel. And coming from IIT, technology was never a challenge for them. Okay, so the technology part was taken care of. They were too good at that. The problem that they had was, how do they turn this into a business which is fundable and sustainable? So that's where we come in. Okay, so we have this 4-stage process through which we take these startups to turn their ideas into business. So the first stage is a canvas called the experiment canvas, where we tell them, go and validate what you're trying to build before even building it. So we go through this experimentation. Okay, it's a canvas that we coach them on. Then we take them to create their value proposition. Okay, so on one side, the customer, on one side, your product. So this is typically leading them to a product market fit. Okay, how does your product address the gains and pains of the customer and what the customer needs to do? Finally, we take them into what we call as a business model canvas. Okay, this is a very lean canvas that we use. And basically what we do is look at your value proposition. How do you create a product and a solution, okay, that justifies your value proposition? And how do you deliver it to your customers? Okay, what are your channels? Okay, what is your differentiation? Okay, what are the key metrics by which you are going to monitor this business? And finally, we look at the monetization angle where we capture value into the startup. So that's the business model canvas that we encourage people to do. And finally, obviously, a milestone plan. Okay, because unless you plan, you cannot work to plan, right? So you have to plan, and so that they have some idea as to what milestones we need to hit if we want to get funding, or what milestones we need to hit if you want to go and acquire some customers. All this is supported by mentoring. Okay, the mentors, we have a pool of about 50 plus mentors, and all these mentors are experienced entrepreneurs who are volunteering their time for free. Okay, so we put them through this mentoring process. So on one side, you have the coaching, and the other side, mentoring. All through the process, what we try to monitor is their investor readiness. Okay, how, so it's a parameter that we have created. Okay, and this is basically on Steve Blank's theory of investor readiness, that we try to measure them across a parameter and say, okay, you are good to go and raise the money, or you need to go back. So it's an iterative process. Finally, when their idea is ready, is turned into a business which is fundable and sustainable, we get them ready for the pitch. Okay, so this is the pitch session that we are going to have today. So pitch is nothing but telling your story in a very compelling way to your investors, to your customers, to your partners, and even to the talent that you want to attract. Now, before I get started, I want to thank a few people, some of our mentors who have helped us groom these startups over the last 3-month period. And I have this list over here, very short list, but I'm going.
So while you do your value proposition, I think one thing you must remember clearly is how will you address user anxiety to switch to your solution, because user is already trying to do something to get that job done, right? So we had taken the example of music, right? People were already using MP3 players and iPhones and so on, okay, and Android phones to listen to music, okay? So for people to switch to Spotify, okay, or people to switch to a streaming service, they had to make sure that people had no hassle switching over, okay? The user anxiety was handled, how the user anxiety was handled there, okay? So similar thing you have to think about when you do your value proposition. And also you have to understand how will you dislodge the users from the comfort of the old solution. Because once the user is settled down into an existing solution, it's very hard to change user habits. It's very hard to bring about change initiatives. Okay, so what is your strategy to dislodge them? What kind of things you're offering which will attract them towards your solution, to try out your solution. And then finally, when you do your product design, try to understand and eliminate the friction in user experience. We mentioned about this, right? Anxiety and friction, or inertia and friction. Okay, so try to understand how can I eliminate friction and to improve activation and engagement. So these are the two words you should remember: activation and engagement, and I'm going to talk about that in today's presentation.
Okay.
So we had basically covered these two blocks of the business model canvas: value proposition and customer segment, through the value proposition canvas. So we're talking about a value, and what we want to do now is how do I reach this value to the customer? Okay, and that's what we are going to cover. So how do we take it to the customer? So I'm going to open up these two more blocks now. Okay, one is the channels and one is the customer relationship, because they will go hand in glove, and I'll show you how they'll go hand in glove. But first, let's look at the channels. Okay, so channels means how a company communicates and reaches its customer segments with the value proposition. Okay, so there are various ways to reach your customers. Okay, so you can reach them by 100% sales, or 100% marketing, or a mix of sales and marketing. Okay, so I will take an example of, how would you build $100 million business? Okay, because we all want to build a very large business, correct? So essentially what we are going to do today is talk about funding sources, okay, which was covered in that presentation, but I will briefly touch upon that. Then we will talk about dilution. I think a lot of founders don't understand, how the dilution works. Then, there was a request from some of you to talk about cap tables or capitalization table. So we'll talk about that. And then we will talk about unpriced rounds. We will talk about safe and convertible notes. And if you remember last time I mentioned that there is a pitch, elevator pitch to ask for funding. So we will cover that also. And then we will go into valuation, how people do valuation. And I will confine my valuation to very, very early stage startups only, because, as we go further to Series A and Series B around, it gets a little more complex. Okay. And Then we will talk about investors' perspective, what you need to understand from an investor's perspective. And this was also covered in the video. I will touch upon one or two slides there, and I will take an example also of a real example. Okay. And then we will look at the funding process, what are the stages. It is not just that you pitch and you get a check written to you, but what are the various stages that it has to go through. And I will cover that both for seed as well as angel investments. Okay. And finally, if I have the time, then I will talk about term sheets. Okay. And what are the things that you have to be careful about when they're written in the term sheets. Okay. So these are the funding sources that you have to fund your startup, right from your own capital to friends, family, to the capital that incubators or accelerators can provide you, crowdfunding, equity crowdfunding, angels, seed funds, and so on. Okay. What is important for the startups at your stage is only these rounds of funding. Okay. So, it is important, as an investor to see that you have put your skin in the game. Okay. So, people always expect that you have bootstrapped the company for a while. If you just have a fancy idea and you take a pitch and say, okay, I have this nice idea based on my experience, I want you to fund me. Nobody will fund you. Nobody will fund you. Okay. They want to say that you have your blood, sweat in the game. Okay. And your dollars also, if possible. Okay. And then the second source obviously is your friends and family, your uncles. We call it friends, families, and fools because the last F is because there are a lot of people who don't understand the business, why they're investing, when they're investing, but they will just it's a herd mentality, right? This friend of mine is investing, let me also put the money here. Okay. So it's a FFF round. Then incubators and accelerators. I have seen a lot of startups survive just purely on money from accelerators. Okay. So they win this contest because they have some fancy idea, and they get 50,000, 100,000, going through the programs, and they keep surviving and developing their startup, take it to an MVP that can be launched also. So the question is, how do I find a North Star metric for my company? So we will take examples that I gave you earlier of Facebook as well as of Airbnb. So nights booked in case of Airbnb capture the value it's both ways. If you see, it captures the value given to the host, and it captures the value provided to the guest also. Okay. So, the guest is an indication, nights is an indication of what service we are providing to the guest and how much money we are going to make. Okay. It's also a value that we are providing to the host. There's so many nights we are able to sell for the host. Okay. So I'm going to take this example of the growth metric okay. So there are two things that you measure in growth. How is a company scaling? Okay. So that is your straight away growth. And how are you able to engage your customers? Okay. The engagement is very important because if you don't engage, you're going to lose those customers. Your churn is going to go up, right? So you want to be able to retain them. So scale and engagement together define the growth metric, because there is no point adding 100 customers every month and losing 75 of them every month. Okay. So your net addition is only 25. Okay. So that's where the scale and engagement both are important. Okay. So earning metrics is about, in case of Airbnb, it is revenue per night spent. It is revenue per night spent. So look at it this way: users into nights per user into revenue per night spent. Okay, that is giving you the total revenue. So on one hand, I will try to manage my growth. On the other hand, I will try to manage my earning metric. Okay, so it's always a two-sided metric that we try to follow. Simply growth at the expense of not a proper earning is no good, right?